doing that, I was face to face with it. It was holding me by my throat, and it felt like it was sucking something out of me.
I probably should have been more scared than I was when I witnessed the exorcism.
I turned and looked on my right side. When I did, there's a beam on the side of the tree, a large beam. It's looking at me and I'm looking at it.
After I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me.
That they're going to show multiple gods all over the earth, be able to speak in people's languages, and at that point, it kind of converge into this one entity, which will be revealed as extraterrestrial. You'll realize that aliens are the gods of old, and at that point, it'll wipe religion out of the context of humanity.
No way, it couldn't have been a person, I know that. I know that people can't run through the woods like that.
So this thing comes into view, and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy-looking being.
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is Uncomfortable. Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to share it here on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your story. They want to hear your experience. So reach out to me and let's get yours on the next episode of Uncomfortable. If you haven't yet, make sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And when you do, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and rating after you listen to a couple of episodes. That alone is the one most important thing that you guys, the listener, can do to help get this show out into the algorithm and out in front of more people. With more people listening, that means more great stories coming your way. Take a minute to check out the Uncomfortable link tree. It's the single best place that you can find anything and everything uncomfortable all in one spot. All of my Uncomfortable episodes, links to the YouTube, links to the Penford Media documentary series that I'm currently featured in. I've got more of those coming, so if you've liked those, you're in for a treat because there's going to be several more. Links to every other podcast that I've had the pleasure of being on. And that address is linktree/uncomfortable1, and uncomfortable is spelled like the logo looks, with the lowercase u and the uppercase N. That is also probably the easiest way to find the Eventbrite link for tickets to this year's September 14th Bigfoot and Brews and Spirits 2. Tickets are on sale now. Make sure you go grab a couple for yourself and whoever you want to take with you. Bigfoot and Brews is quickly becoming one of the premier Bigfoot conferences in southwestern Michigan. In Michigan, to be honest with you, the whole state of Michigan. So if you're interested, the date is September 14th. It's coming up in just a couple of months here for the event. And then currently we are looking at having a VIP dinner with all 5 of the speakers on the night of the 13th at the same location. Both the VIP dinner and the event are being held at Sister Lakes Brewing Company in Dowagiac, Michigan. That's smack dab in the middle of the southwest Michigan. Just about 35 minutes north of the Indiana state line. We're just about 2 months out. I'm saying it's time to get your tickets and get them soon because depending on capacity this year at the door, tickets may not be available. So I highly suggest you get them online. Follow the links for that in the show notes below, or you can go to the link tree. They'll be there as well. Also, keep your eye open because there is a link for an online store for the purchase of this year's newly designed Bigfoot and Brews t-shirt. We've got a great new design. It's badass. If you order it online, you're going to have several more options than what would be available there the day of the event. If you're unable to make the event and you'd like to still purchase one of them, we'd love to have you do so. Just simply at checkout, check the shipping, and they will ship it to you from the manufacturer. If you're planning on attending the event, then you can avoid the shipping charges by selecting pickup at checkout. If you do that, then your shirt will be waiting for you at the event in my booth with your name on it. If you decide you want to have it shipped, go right ahead. But in this way, I can offer you the ability to avoid those additional shipping charges. I'll post a picture of the new shirt design so you guys can check that out. It'll be on the socials. So Instagram or Facebook, you'll be able to find the pictures of the shirts. It's going to be a great show this year. We're super excited about it. So make sure you get your tickets, and don't forget to check out the discounted combo VIP dinner. And if you get the event, the day of event for the 14th, and you get the VIP dinner for the night before, it's a discounted rate, but that does include your dinner and one drink from the bar. All the info is available in the various links in the show notes below. And now for tonight's guest. I had the fortune of meeting this gentleman in person last October. It immediately struck me as a kind and welcoming individual. I would say even almost an immediate sense of seeing an old friend after a long time. He and his co-hosts have graciously welcomed me into their community, and their ravenous fan base has as well. And for that, I say thank you. You will always have a home here at Uncomfortable, no matter what. So, if you guys are ready, let's get into it. So if you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to one of the stewards of divergent thinking, unconventional fuckery, and to the co-captain of the transmedium starship Holosky. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kyle Brady. Kyle, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me on today, man.
Thanks for reaching out, bud. I was thrilled to hear from you. It's been a minute since we had a chance to talk. Last time we sat in with you and Steve, we at least on this episode on my show, we got into some things I don't think any one of us were really intending to get into, but
yeah,
that was a highly remarked on show. I think the depths that we went to in that episode kind of surprised some people as far as what we go through as far as doing what we do.
Yeah, the waters definitely run deep, man. I think a lot of people like to think that it's all fun because a lot of times we sit and joke a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is a darker side to all of it. It does bear weight, and it can suck at times.
It definitely can take a lot out of you. And I'm not trying to put a spin on it as far as, ooh, it was a dark energy that was taking this out of me. That's not what I'm getting at. But when you open yourself to other people's experiences and the trauma or the pain that they endured or went through with their experiences, it has an effect on you. And it wears you down. And when you have several of those episodes in a row, it can be tough.
Yeah.
And you want to do a good job. You want to be earnest. You want to be sincere. You want to, I guess from my standpoint, I've opened up to that so much in the past that I feel if I don't do that for somebody, then they're going to feel shortchanged, or the audience listening is going to feel like, oh, why didn't he engage that? Why didn't he ask this? Why didn't he ask that? And so it's kind of creating your own hell, as it were, by getting into that.
Yeah. And another thing I think that people should probably focus on is empathy, because you're an older fella, just like I am. Like, we've lived life, right?
Yeah.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility when somebody's explaining a situation to us or what they went through. Guys like you and me and people that listen have the ability to walk in their shoes, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, cause it would be no different than if somebody, and I would never ever want this for anyone. This is just an example. If somebody were to come to you or me and express the loss of a child, we haven't,
Yeah.
I haven't lost a child, but I can understand how absolutely horrid that situation would be because I have children. I have the love for my children, right?
Yeah.
So I think to varying degrees as we get older, we have an ability to halfway walk in their shoes to understand the hardships that some people go through when they experience these things because I have
Absolutely.
experiences that still semi haunt me to this day. You know, it's just a psychological disease almost that is just so hard to get past.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't listen. I don't know about you. I can't speak for you, but I can tell you there's no certificate on my wall that shows that I am a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist in any way, shape, or form. But I guess what I have been blessed with is the ability to have conversation, to approach things with a level of intelligence that lets me show my empathy in the way that I speak to people and how I treat their experience. You know, one of the most powerful things that has come as a result of doing this show is I had a gentleman who literally wrote me and said that listening to my show saved his life. Now, before everybody goes, bullshit. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. You know, this is not me patting myself on the back or saying, hey, look at me. I'm so wonderful. I had a guest on and her experience had nothing to do with his experience. But there was one thing that she said in her conversation with me that to him hit him where it needed to. And it changed his perspective on taking his life. So through his own admission, had he not listened to my episode, he would have taken his life. That is, if I've done anything in this life that has been good and true, I've raised 2 remarkable children who are now fully functioning, well-adjusted adults. And they're kind and they don't judge people and they give them a chance. But other than that, if I in some way, shape, or form was responsible for somebody hearing what they needed to hear to keep them from taking their life, I don't take back any of the hours that I've spent doing this. I don't take back any of the hours that I spent in conversation. I don't take back any of the editing that I've had to do. That to me, that is worth its weight in gold. I mean, you can't even put a value on that. It's a human life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and that's powerful, absolutely powerful. We've had similar situations, and there's almost a level of like just being surreal where you're just like, there's no way, like there's just no way. I appreciate the kind words, I appreciate the thought, but then if you really sit down and think about it, not that this is forever the case, but isn't that what having conversations is supposed to do? Aren't we supposed to say things, whether they're hurtful or kind, empathetic or not, but the the significance of mine and your conversation may not be as significant as to someone else listening, because
Right.
it's all in a varying way. You could look at it like music, right?
Mhm.
We all enjoy music. We look at music in different ways. I love music that makes me feel a certain type of way, but that same song might not make you feel the same way that it makes me feel,
Right.
and so it strikes a different chord with me than you, and that's conversation. Like, that's why a lot of times Steve and I, we try not to read people's submissions until right away, because we love the aha moments where things
Mhm.
click. Like, you can hear it click in into the head, like, oh wow,
Yeah.
and then it just makes sense, right? So I think every conversation is significant. I think it just may not be significant to you and me, or that person over there. And some people hate our conversations. Other
Yeah.
people find salvation in it,
Yeah.
And that's just the way it's supposed to be.
I think it is. And, the art of conversation, I don't even think you can say arguably, is lost.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've been able to have conversations with people where their viewpoints may not directly reflect mine. I can have conversations with people whose religious beliefs may contradict mine. Um, any number of things. But to be able to end a conversation in a friendly manner, to part ways, not being angry at each other, not having to feel like you had to choose a side, to me, all that does is open my perspective and let me look at things from a number of different ways. Whereas opposed to before I had that conversation, I only saw it from this way and that way. Now I can see it from this way, that way, and this way, you know, and you can apply that to everything in life, you know?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And for me personally, every once in a while I like having my mind tested. Like, I
Yeah.
like, because I sometimes these conversations that we have, they wear me out. Like, by the end of it, I'm not trying to talk no more. I wanna go lay down and watch TV for a little bit and just turn off, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause it requires for me, it requires so much computing power upstairs that it just wears you out. It just exhausts you. And I like that once in a while, It's like trying to learn something new, like you said, and being able to see things as clearly as you possibly can. I don't know. I just really I think that's where wisdom comes from, man. I
Oh,
really
I
do.
100% agree. 100%.
Yeah,
And it
because
also I think it also filters into regular life as well, because I think that I'm a better listener now. I think that me personally, I've always been a fixer. I can fix this. I can fix this. My kids come to me with a problem. I can fix it. I got a problem with my car. I can fix it. I've always been a fixer. Um, but sometimes people aren't looking to be fixed. And sometimes it's not your place to fix things. So I think that I'm a much better listener. And I think more times than not, that's what somebody needs from me more than me putting my brain power to something and being able to fix it.
I agree.
They
I
need
I
to just be heard.
I don't I never really thought again, I never really gave it a whole lot of, thought, but there is some and I'll probably catch some a little bit astray for this, but, dude, like, when you're at work and there's you're having a bad day, right? Let's just say it's too hot inside work, and you're bitching about it to your coworker. There's nothing better than when your coworker agrees and starts bitching back. You know what I'm saying? Where you're both complaining.
Yeah.
And I know some people are like, "Oh, this just no, it doesn't. It actually, in some cases, builds camaraderie. It builds
Yeah.
compassion for you. You know what I mean? You're both
You're,
officially on the same page.
you're going through it together.
Exactly. And there's just something like it. Even though it's terrible, at the end of the day, you got a smile on your face because you're like, you're a real one. Thank you for going in the mud with me. Like, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. We made it through this. We made it through it today. And there's something to that.
I think so. I really do. And, I mean, I look at my kids and like I said, my ex-wife and I, we did a great job raising them. They're good people. But they are victims. They are victims of the time. And, so much of their time is spent with their head down in their phone. And, maybe it's video games endlessly for hours, not going outside, not spending time out in nature, not getting the fresh air, feeling like they're getting something, their job is getting one over on them and stuff like that. I do see that there's like a lack of gratitude in that age group, not to be happy for what you have. Something should always be better. I don't like the culture at work. I don't like the culture at this hospital. I don't like the way the doctors talk to me. I don't like the way, my boss tells me what I have to do. Well, times have changed, man. And, back when I was cutting my teeth on being in the workforce, you fucking did what you had to do. You did what people told you to, because that was your job. Did I walk out of there and say, man, that guy was a dick today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. But, it wasn't, I don't know. There's something, the education system, the education system seems like it does a couple of things now. It creates worker bees that are going to be the mass of the population, that are going to always be trying to get that extra nut and trying to afford that extra car payment and trying to afford that mortgage and trying to afford this. And then you got the other ones, because the way the education system is designed now, and not throwing any shade at the teachers, because I think teachers do what they can, but it seems like even in school now, that separation between the upper echelon that's going to go into college, get high paying jobs, end up in corporate America, get to the CEO or CFO or whatever. And then you got the other ones that are always going to be at that $50,000 and $60,000 a year range, where, it's going to continue to be tough for them. And I guess I don't know even why I went into that, but I mean, I got great kids. I got great kids, but I still see that divisiveness as far as not being happy with what they have, not being happy with the way things are. And, maybe I'm not looking at it right, because when you do take a look at our political system and all the shit that's going on in the country related to that, not going to get into one way or another, but, good Lord, man.
Well, those things are infectious.
Yeah.
Right. The bad attitudes are infectious. And I know it sounds contradictive of what I said earlier about us bitching, but there's a difference between what I was saying and what these people are doing. You and me are going through a struggle together, and we make it out on the other side. We survive that together. We now have that bonding experience. We both acknowledge that the situation sucked, but we overcame it, right? We beat its ass that day, even though it got us too.
Yeah.
But we came together and we beat it, right? Now, I think in today's society, everybody just wants to point the finger. Nobody likes, we were talking about earlier, nobody likes the word accountability.
Accountability. Yeah. I knew you were going there.
It's true, right? Like we just, and don't get me wrong, I do feel like a lot of this day-to-day life is by design. I think that it's supposed to be this way. Not like it's supposed to, but I think by design, this is how it's supposed to be. They want people, to be fair, let's be honest with ourselves. Corporations, government, kind of makes sense that they want people who aren't happy with what they have right now. Yeah. Because then, now I'm going to go sacrifice more of my time for a little bit of that money, so then I can go buy something that I deem better, or better yet, something that you deem better, but I can achieve it. And I think it's just a perpetual cycle of just, honestly, it's just loss. Because at the end of the day, we're trading the most finite resource in existence for something that doesn't matter, and that's time.
Yeah.
We don't get that back. It's gone once it's gone, right? You can make money. You can get another car. You can get another loaf of bread. But you can't get that time back. That's important.
A very good point. It's a very good point.
And that's kind of how I've started to like dictate my life to a varying degree. You know, people cry about stuff with our show, and I sat down and I thought about it, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. So now there's people out there that think that they can tell me what my time's worth. Well, that's not, because when it comes to side work or now overtime, I don't work overtime anymore, because the way I look at it is my Saturday with my family and my children is worth way more than like $200.
And back to what you said, that time you can never get that back.
Exactly. And don't act like for a second. I'm speaking to everybody out there, and you, Eric. Don't act like for a second that we don't remember those times where our moms and dads couldn't make it to our ball game because they had to work. Yeah. Don't act like you forgot about that. You remember it. And you feel it just like our children do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I've started. And then somebody phrased something the other day that was absolutely horrifying. People have started to look at life, and I refuse to do this because it's way too scary. But think about it like this, Eric. How old are you?
59.
59. Okay. So there are people that are in your shoes right now that let's say they plan to make it to 80. So they go, I've got 20 summers left. Think about how scary that is.
Yeah.
Like these people will put marbles in a cup of how many summers they think they have left, and every summer they pull one out.
Take one out.
Dude, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like when you really think about it, like 20 is a small number. That's a small number.
Well, in a sense, I've already gone through that at one point in my life, because both my grandparents, both my grandfathers died at 49 and 48. Heart disease, heavy smokers, heavy drinkers, we're not living good lives. So I lost both of those when I was a baby. And then my dad, I lost him to a stupid accident when he was 50. So from the age of about 22 until I hit 50, I felt like I was living with a countdown clock. Because for some reason in our family, it didn't seem like men made it much past 50.
Yeah, that's an uncomfortable feeling there, man.
It was always in the back of my mind, and you start getting to 43, 45, 46, and
we're getting close.
Yeah. And so I literally went through that. But by the time I hit 52, 53, I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to be the one.
I just want everybody to appreciate the every day they wake up, Like I always tell my wife, I get upset with her at times because she's always trying to go. And I'm like, hey, let's sit down. Let's appreciate the lazy day.
Yeah.
Let's appreciate sitting out on the back patio, throwing some food on the grill, letting the kids run around. We ain't got to go spend money. We ain't got to go to Six Flags. Let's just spend, because another lesson that I've learned in life is if anybody out there notices, and this is what I've noticed personally in genuine people, if I were to ask you, Eric, on your deathbed, if you're dying right now, and I'm like, Eric, what did you get out of life? What did you Like, what are some of the most memorable moments of your life? 9 times out of 10, you know what people do? They name the most mundane, simplest answers. I remember sitting at the dinner table every night having dinner. You don't talk about that trip to Disneyland.
Right.
You don't talk about no. You talk about these one-off situations, having dinner together, or that time we were having a barbecue and Eric was doing this over there. It was the best day of my life. Those are the things that we remember. It
Or
is
I
not
never missed one of Rachel's tennis matches, or I never
right.
missed one of Jake's football games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those are what is remembered. It's not remembered on how much money we went out there and spent.
Yeah.
Because those aren't building blocks of life. And
That
that's
is
just
very, very true.
for me, that was so humbling to come to that conclusion. Like, and then I've seen other people live less than what I have, and they are so much happier than where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy, like, wow, like that. It is achievable. It is achievable. You don't need everything in the world. We're
No.
just told that we do.
Well, social media, television, everything, all of that is a huge component of that. Those are the things that lodge in your brain, and you know that's what people strive for. They want to have those glamorous lives, and they want to be the ones that are posting the pictures on their social medias where they're in some tropical heaven where but that's one picture.
Yeah.
That's one picture. Maybe a
Don't
handful.
get me wrong. Those things are nice once in a while too. Everybody deserves to go on a vacation for sure. Absolutely. But don't make it your life. Don't make it your life. Appreciate the small things. I know that's like the most cliche thing to say ever. Appreciate the small things, but it's true. There's a lot of meaning in the small things.
Well, cliches for me, in the past short few months, cliches have taken on a new meaning for me. They're not so cliche anymore.
Yeah.
They do hold a lot of truth, and yeah. So I don't think it's cliche at all.
Good. Like I said, everybody just needs to appreciate what they have. I know tomorrow's never promised, and it's just, I don't know, man. I just want to look back and know that I did my best to do the right thing, and I spent a lot of time with my family and just enjoyed as much of it as I possibly could. Because we can all sit here and bitch all day long about the things that hold us down.
Right.
We need to start focusing on the things that pick us back up. That's what we needed to do. And I'm just as guilty as the next person. I'll sit here and let the world kick me in the teeth repeatedly. Just pop, pop, pop. But I need to remember who I have in my corner. I need to remember who I can call and ask for help.
Yeah.
Or call for, hey, you want to come over, have a beer, hang out for a little bit, shoot the shit, have a good time. That's what I need to focus on, just like everybody else.
Yeah. I think that's never been more true than right now. I think collectively we need to start focusing more on that, because it's certainly not being that type of behavior isn't being shepherded by anybody, at least in this country.
Yeah,
I don't know about the rest of the world, but
it's wild out there.
But that's a half hour of real talk with with Kyle and Eric.
It's easy to get carried away.
But that's not why you're here. I extended the offer to you quite some time ago if you ever wanted to talk about the experiences you've had in a uncomfortable situation. That I'd be more than happy and honored if you came on the show and talked about it with us. And lo and behold, a couple of days ago, I get a text from my buddy Kyle.
Say, I'm ready.
Well, let's get into it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. You initially reached out to me because I posted a picture about my experiences lining up with the scientists. And it is weird going through his whole life story. I still want to try to talk to him because a lot of his experiences directly correlate with my experiences. And even more than that, there's tons and tons of people out there who apparently on a timeline through their childhood into adulthood have extremely similar experiences. So that's concerning in itself. But my first experience that I can remember, and I always tell it almost exactly the same way, it was second or third grade, and I was sleeping. And I woke up to the noise of something hitting the screen, like the mesh screen that's on the outside of your window, almost like something tapped it. And I woke up and the window was right next to my head. And so I look out the window expecting to see something, in your head. I kind of attribute it to like a bird or something to that degree. And there's nothing there, nothing at all. And I can remember looking back across my room because now I'm awake. And across from where I'm sleeping on the other side of the room, there's a desk. And then there's like a 2 foot gap. And then my dresser. The room's black. I have a nightlight right next to my bed underneath the window. So it casts a shadow that way to where that gap in between the dresser and the desk is pretty dark. And as my eyes get to that gap, I'm staring at the cliche almond-shaped eyes looking back at me. However, these eyes are different. And this is where I may lose people, but there's also history to what I'm about to say. The eyes were pixelated. They looked like if you were to pick up a Super Nintendo and play a video game about aliens. It was all pixels, but there was a black line that would be the almond. The center of the eye was white with a black pupil. But they were pixelated. And it instantly scared me to death because I had no idea what was going on. I just saw these two almond-shaped eyes staring back at me. And so I sat there and stared at them for what for me felt like an eternity. It felt like time just stopped because I was so afraid of what I was looking at. And I remember getting so scared that I just pulled the blankets up over my head. And I did the first thing that I thought anyone in that situation would do. I started saying the All Father. I started praying. And then that calmed me down to where I clearly remember thinking, okay, on the count of 3, I'm going to pull this blanket down. And if whatever that is still there, I'm going to beeline across. I'm going to jump out of bed as fast as I possibly can and go to mom and dad's room. That's the plan. And believe it or not, as a second or third grader, I counted to 3 and I pulled that cover over my head and it was gone. There was nothing else in the room that night. And
I got to ask you, like, so you focused very intently on the eyes.
Yes.
Do you recall like the outline of the head, any other part of the body was, or were you just kind of fixated on the eyes?
All I remember seeing is the eyes. That image is seared into my brain. And I think what it was, you hear stories of screen memories. And you hear stories of these things trying to manipulate your brain into thinking they're friendly and familiar. At the time, I mean, dude, I'm 38 years old. I still love playing video games. I love video. I always have, ever since I was a little kid. And I think what happened is they used that against me because I loved video games, man. Absolutely love, because that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Something
And
that you would easily recognize and something that you held dear to you.
yep. Yep. Ironically enough, as you read through that story that I looked into, it's a Dominion Lost, a scientist's own alien abduction encounters by Bruce E. Rapindo. Ironically enough, there's a lot of people in the world who don't have the exact similar experience that I did, because in his, roughly about the same age, he saw a translucent being in his room, roughly the same situation as I described. But I find it extremely weird that for a lot of people who have these encounters, it drove their interest into the paranormal, and all of them say almost the exact same thing about third grade is whenever I started getting into the paranormal because I had an experience. Boom, boom, boom. So there's a ton of us in the world right now that for whatever unknown reason, because every time me and Steve talk about it, we both say the same thing about third grade is when we started really getting into aliens and Bigfoot and Loch Ness. And I don't find that, I mean, at some point you have to stop saying that it's coincidence.
I'm smiling because at 5 years old, I was obsessed with UFOs. Obsessed. To the point where, and the reason I can pinpoint it so easily is because Chariots of the Gods was a movie that came out. It was based on one of Eric Van Doniken's books in, I don't know what, come out in 1969 or 1970. And they made it a documentary. And I remember seeing the commercials on TV for it. And I begged and pleaded with my parents to take me to see it, and they would not take me. And I finally convinced my grandmother to take me to see it when she was babysitting for me one day. So I don't know what, five years old is kindergarten, first grade.
Roughly. Yeah.
Kindergarten.
Yeah, it's about kindergarten.
So, you know, and here's the other thing. It was, I would get as much information as I could. And at that age, it was, you know, watching the news with my parents, or being in the room while I wasn't watching the news. But, you know, if I heard the word UFO, you know, I was looking at the TV.
Ready to go.
But when it came time to go to bed, I was scared shitless.
Yep. I was the same way.
I had to leave the light on in the hallway. The door could never be closed. And I was firmly convinced that something was outside my bedroom window and it was going to get me.
It's weird. It's weird that a lot of people will find similarities in their past like that. There's a lot of us that are like that. I just don't think we've ever put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And it didn't, dude. I mean, it just didn't, because, you know, with these experiences that I'm going to share today, and I'm sure for anybody out there who comes and tells their story, when you're isolated to your own experiences, you're isolated to your own mind. Your mind does what your mind is supposed to do and begins to rationalize and explain things away. I mean, if you think about it, it's probably a survival mechanism that
Sure.
we do those things. And how many times have we have people reach out to us who are like, man, I heard a story on your show, Eric, that kind of validated some of my experiences.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I've always believed my experiences. I've always believed they were true, but there's always that part in the back of my brain that's like, was I a little kid? You know, was I just scared of the X-Files? Was I scared of what I was reading throughout the day? And then I randomly the other day pick up this book and I start reading the book, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, everything this dude, he remembers more than I do. I'll give him that. But there's so many cases in his book that identically match what I went through.
Speaking of the book, do you know, like, are these similar accounts? Are these people who just came across having these memories on their own, or were there regressive hypnosis therapies going on for a lot of these people?
I think there was a mixture of both, to be honest. I think both happened in those cases. Because Bruce does a really, really well job of citing information, and he did his own research, because not only does he tell you his experience, but then he also does back research and pulls other experiences from other sources that are extremely similar, just like mine would be similar. Like I legitimately could have been one of his studies to be in that book.
Yeah.
With my experiences. And it is mind blowing to sit and consider that option.
Have you ever considered the idea of regressive hypnosis?
So I've had that suggested a lot, and for an extremely long time, it has always been no. I will not do that, because if there are things locked away, they're locked away for a reason. I do not want them. However, the more and more comfortable I get in this world, the more and more I'm considering that option. However, as it's going on, I think if I were to do it, it would have to be like this. Say you're the therapist in that situation. It would be, Eric, I'm willing to do this. Okay. I'm going to work under the circumstance that you're not going to guide me. You're not going to implant things in my head. It is what it is. Right. And nothing that happens today goes beyond this door. Right. I would record it.
It would have to be recorded, because I would need proof that I wasn't being guided.
Right. I would definitely want it recorded. However, no one is to listen to it or talk about it until I have gone through it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not exactly, I don't think people should, but I really don't want people rooting around in my brain necessarily, you know?
Yeah.
And I think
I don't want to be woke up and have something planted by some dipshit who says every time you hear somebody fart, you start dancing a jig.
Right, exactly.
So I don't want that to happen either.
Yeah,
so
and
trust,
it's very
trust is a huge thing.
Yeah, I would want to go through it by myself first, and then I would determine if it would come out or not. You know, if it validated my experiences one way or the other, it would come out. And even if it discredited it, like even if it was 100% disproving everything that I've ever experienced, I wouldn't put that audio out there. However, I would come on and say, this is what happened.
Right.
I would be honest about it. I legitimately would. I know most people would probably hide it and say, no, I had these encounters. I at the very least would approach it. Here's what happened. My internal memory, whatever you want to call it, has contradicted everything that I've said. So I'll leave that for you guys to decide. I really don't know where I'm at right now, because I remember it as being real. However, I guess I remember it being fabricated. So
yeah,
it's a tough one, you know. It's a tough one. But that was one experience over. If I had to guess, so what? Third grade's probably 8 or 9 years old. The majority of the more convincing encounters of my life probably stopped when I was about 18 or 20. And they were ones, like, some of these are verified by my wife. She was there to witness it. Firsthand witnessed it. And like I said, so much of it matches up. So I'm trying to go in chronological order. You have to keep in mind that I am 38, and like that first one would have happened when I was 7, 8 years old. So you're talking 30 years.
Yeah.
But the next memory I remember is more directed in my teen years. So probably 13 to 15. And I can remember, and keep in mind, I'm friends with Steve, and I tell him about these things later on in life too. And this is before the podcast, before all of it. But I can remember one day waking up and I don't know what I was doing. I don't know if I got out of the shower. I don't remember how I stumbled onto it. But I had this knot in the center of my chest, very center of my chest. And
Like a physical knot?
yeah, like this little protrusion coming out of the center of my chest. And I can see something in it and it's black. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I sit and I squeeze at it and I squeeze at it and I squeeze at it. Can't get it out. And then I let it scab over because I squeeze so hard it's bleeding. So I let it scab over. And then I go back at it the next day. Pick the scab off, squeeze it, and it comes out. And it's this little, about the size of a pellet. I've always described it like half the size of a pea. But in Bruce's book, he describes those implants as about the size of a pellet, which ironically enough is probably roughly close to half the size of a pea. Really think about it. And I don't know if it was an implant or not. It was fucking weird. Like I said, it was a dark, it wasn't like jet black. It was blackish gray. And I described it as jagged. Had these ridges to it. And I remember grabbing a pair of tweezers and squeezing it, and the tweezers bent around it. So it wasn't biological. At least I don't think that it could be biological material because the tweezers literally bent around it. And I didn't think anything beyond that, right? So I clearly remember throwing it down the sink. I just let it go down the sink. But I'm also 13, 15 years old, somewhere in that neck of the woods. Fast forward to later on in life, I'm telling Steve about it. And Steve's like, dude, you do realize that like in a lot of these implant cases where people are able to get them out, in 90% of the cases, they all do exactly what you did. They just instantly throw them away. And so people wonder if that has programming behind it from the people who put it in there, because Bruce also talks about that. He also talks about histories of nosebleeds, and he can remember voices telling him, don't let them see the blood. And he describes the implants almost similar to as I described them. Not exactly, not dead on, but the ones he describes go in through the nose. A lot of people have them go through the nose or behind the ear.
I gotta pop in here because you're saying shit and I'm having like flashbacks of I had more fucking bloody noses as a little kid, to the point where, and this scared the absolute shit out of me, that my parents had taken me to the doctor about it so many times that they were actually talking about cauterizing the inside of my sinuses, the inside of my nose, because they thought that the like internal membrane or whatever was too thin.
Are you sure you didn't live my childhood?
Now listen, the other thing I remember being, and this is going to be kind of gross. I can remember being 8 or 9, maybe 10. I was young enough that I wasn't having pimples yet. I can remember my dad. Calling me into the bathroom and telling me to open up the cabinet and open up the drawer and grabbed a pair of tweezers for him because he had something that he was squeezing on his chest, in like his left, maybe like the upper part of his left pectoral. I can remember him complaining about it because he used to wear these, I think maybe the material was like polyester or rayon. I think maybe it was. So, he never wore an undershirt or anything, but when he would wear these shirts, his nipple, I must have inherited his nipples because mine have a mind of their own. They're always sticking out, but you could see everything through the shirt, like on his, and you could see that bump. And it was maybe like, I'm just guessing, but maybe like the size of a dime, maybe a nickel, it just was a bump. And I handed him the tweezers, and I can remember thinking that I didn't want to see what was happening. I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what was going on. I never had a pimple that I had to squeeze and, get anything out of. But I can remember him, and I backed out of the bathroom, and he was squeezing this thing, and he was standing in front of the sink facing the mirror. And he was taking those damn tweezers and like picking, like, I assume he was picking skin off of it to try to like open it up so it would come out. When it popped and it came out, it hit the mirror and it broke the mirror.
Jesus. Come out like a rocket.
And I understand this is gross, but I mean, I don't remember anything else other than him going, "Oh, God damn it."
Yeah. I'm sure.
Because it hurt.
Yeah, of course.
But, I'm like, put together, like the fucking bloody noses. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Dude, I was the same way. Like when you're describing about going to the doctor and getting it cauterized, I remember the exact same conversation when in my childhood. I can remember laying in bed and having my eye fill up with blood that was coming out of my nose. It pooled in my eye. I woke up screaming, terrified because I didn't know what was going on.
I would wake up in the morning and my pillow was just caked with blood.
Yep. And come to find out through Bruce's research, it does seem to have lineage. It follows lineage. Because guess currently, not so much right now, but guess who did have tons and tons and tons and tons of nosebleeds? Child. My child. Who has also talked about seeing red and blue lights come into his room and have conversations with him.
Your son?
My son. At the time, kind of brushed off because he was probably, I don't know, 4, 5 at the oldest. And he would talk about these little blue and red lights that would come into the room and talk to him. And I'm like, on one hand, it scares the shit out of you as a parent,
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the other hand, you're like, okay, he is 4. He also talks about, because at the time, he was slightly aware of me being into some of this stuff. So every once in a while, he thought it was cute to like grab his little battery powered lantern and he'd go out in the backyard and go, "Dad, I'm going to go find Bigfoot," and it's adorable. Right. And so your rational brain kicks in when these happen. And you go, all right, well, he's probably just fabricating things to be relevant, to join in my conversation, to relate to his father. But then you look back and think about it and then pair it with nosebleeds. Well, I had tons of nosebleeds. Eric has tons of nosebleeds. Maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something to that. Because ironically enough, Eric, did you have any sisters?
No, I was an only child.
Only child. See, I had 3 sisters and a brother. None of them had bloody noses like I had bloody noses. Not to say that there can't be differences. Of course, there can be differences.
Sure.
But it's still weird that none of them had them the way that I did. I don't even think they a quarter of what I would have. It almost got to the point where it almost felt like a daily thing where your nose would bleed. It was just so bad, out of control.
Yeah. And I can remember having it happen a few times at school,
Mm-hmm.
but the vast majority of it always happened during the night.
And you'd always get the run around about the humidity in the air, your nose is drying out, and all that shit. I mean, that seemed like a pretty common thing to say. But it is.
It got to the point where after I had gone to the doctor a couple of times for it, and the conversation about cauterizing, I was terrified to wake up because I didn't want to see, because I knew if it continued to happen, my parents were going to make me go. And all I understood, I didn't have any understanding of, they would numb it first, or they'd give you, it was like, they're going to stick something hot in my nose and burn the skin of my inside of my nose.
Right.
So it would turn into scar tissue, so it wouldn't bleed anymore.
And let me guess, ironically enough, shortly after that, your nosebleeds went away. Weird, huh?
Yeah.
Weird how that plays out. Because mine was the same thing. I don't hardly get nosebleeds at all anymore. But it would have been extremely interesting if we had gone to the doctor, because Bruce notes that in a lot of cases, these people will find puncture holes up at the top of their nose where something has been driven through that membrane into the frontal lobe of your brain.
Really?
Yep.
I'm curious. Have you ever heard of Roger Lear, Dr. Roger Lear?
I think so. Is he the one that did a bunch of research in trying to pull these implants out of people?
Yeah. And I wish I could remember the name of it. There's a pretty good documentary that featured him in it. Patient 19, maybe. I want to say that was the name of it. I could be wrong. I'll have to look.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was hot on the trail of removing these from multiple patients.
And it seems like in most cases, if you do suspect it, you almost have to get it removed immediately, because there's cases reported where people go talk to the doctor. They go, and do the initial steps of having a low key surgery like that, and then the next time they go to the doctor, well, the implant's gone. It's not there anymore.
Yeah,
it's poofed. It's gone. But it's interesting, I'm not sitting in 100% saying that what was inside my chest was an alien implant. Of course, it could have been a plethora of other things, but it adds to the overall of my story. That's at least an odd thing to have take place. Bare minimum.
I agree.
Definitely weird. I'm trying to think what would come first. I used to have nightmares of a light bar, because I had bunk beds in my room. And I remember in my dreams, I would be huddled against the wall on the bottom bunk, hoping that this light bar coming through the window wouldn't find me, scan my entire room looking for me, and keep that in mind. But chronologically, the next thing is probably the scariest thing that I went through all of this. Like, I remember coming home from work one night. I had to have been 17, 18 at the oldest. And I can remember getting home and my cat was waiting at the end of the driveway. And I was like, that's weird. It's almost 10 o'clock at night. Why is he out down here? I don't know, whatever. Pull in, he comes over to me. Everything's hunky-dory. But I start noticing this black dog walking back and forth on the sidewalk to my mom and dad's house. I'm like, what is going on here? So I go and kind of approach the dog, and it was a large black dog. I couldn't tell you what it was, but it started growling at me. So I'm like, well, fuck this. I'm going to go inside. I'm not getting ate by a dog. That's stupid. So I go inside, and I go to the front door, open the door, and there he is. He's at the front door. and he's growling at the front door at me. And I'm like, what in the fuck is this thing's problem? So I shut the door and I go to the kitchen windows and they're probably every bit of, I don't know, 8 feet off the ground or so. And the dog jumps up to that window and like his head is in the window now. Like he jumps up and then comes down and it scares the shit out of me. I'm like, well, okay, there's something seriously wrong with this thing. And then it takes its time and walks around the side of the house where I can't see it no more. So I'm like, whatever, thing's gone. End of story. So I go in the living room where our computer was, and for all you oldies out there, you remember MSN Messenger. I get on there, and my wife, who is at the time is my girlfriend, I'm talking with her. We're just talking, and doing what the youngsters did back then. And all of a sudden, I hear thudding noises. And I'm like, what in the fuck is that? And it sounds like something is running across the roof of our house. And I'm like, so I'm literally, she can tell you, like if she was here, I'd have her tell you. I'm messaging her, I think someone's trying to break into the house. And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm dead serious. I'm terrified. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I try waking my mom up because she's literally sleeping on the couch right next to where I'm at. She had fallen asleep on the couch. So I go wake her up. I'm like, I think somebody's trying to break into the house. And she like, it's one of them like where she's groggy when she's like, just go to bed. And then she goes back to sleep. Right. So I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And finally I get so scared of hearing these noises. I just tell my wife, I'm like, I'm going to bed. I don't know what the fuck is going on. And as I'm walking, I can remember it was so fucking scary. I'm walking through my house to go to my bedroom from the living room, and there's in between the living space and my bedroom, there's a utility room, like a laundry room / bathroom, and it has a door that goes outside. As I get to that point, I just hear it in my head. What it was that dog beating its head off that door. Just boom, 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 boom. Dude, I'm telling you, I have never been so scared in my life. I still keep going to my room. And as I go to my room and lay in bed, now the noise is underneath my window. Boom, 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 boom. And my mom had already kind of given up on me. So I didn't know what the fuck to do. I had no idea. I'm just laying in bed, terrified at this point. Absolutely terrified. So the only thing that I could do, I locked the door to my room, made sure my window was locked. I didn't even look outside. I was too scared for that. And then I turned my TV on and turned it up loud enough to drown out that noise until I finally fell asleep. And to this day, I have no idea what any of that was about. I've talked to Steve about it, and Steve had read cases where large black dogs have been associated with alien abductions.
Really?
Yes. I forget. Steve would be able to tell you the case. I do not remember what it was, but there's I want to say it happened down in Florida where a guy was riding his bike. A large black dog was following him. The night transcends. He goes in, he lays in bed, and he feels something crawl under the bed. And he's like, oh, it's my cat. But then he remembers, oh shit, my cat's outside. What is crawling up me right now? And as he peeks his eyes, he sees the atypical gray alien crawling up his bed towards him, which would be terrifying. I'm glad I don't have that memory. But that is probably single-handedly one of the scariest things that I've ever gone through. You may or may not attribute it to ET. I do. But like I told you before, I had those nightmares of lights coming in the room looking for me.
Before you get into that,
yeah,
I assume you continued to live at that place for quite some time.
Yeah.
That dog was not a recognizable dog that you'd had seen in the neighborhood. You
never saw it
again after.
Before or after, I'd never seen that animal ever.
Was it remarkable in any way?
It was larger than what you expect of like a black lab.
Okay.
It's bigger than a black lab, but it was nighttime. It was dark, and I don't remember a whole lot of details other than it was mean as fuck, and it was bigger than what. It wasn't so big that it scared the shit out of me. It was just a larger dog than you're used to seeing.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like there was nothing crazy about it at all, like that I can recall. Anyways, nothing out of this world about it. It just seemed like a big black dog.
Gotcha. And before you get into the rest of it, that documentary is actually called Patient 17.
Patient 17.
Yeah.
I feel like I've at least seen the title out there before.
It's good.
Let's go watch it.
Yeah, it's worth a watch because they do describe some of the unusual properties of the tissue that has attached to the implant once they've been removed.
Yeah,
because that shouldn't happen.
Yeah,
with a foreign object in your body, there shouldn't be any cellular
like bonding
to it, and these appeared to not behave that way.
It's very, very interesting when you look into that type of stuff. It just seems far more advanced than what we're capable of. I'm not saying that we don't have that technology because we probably do. However, we're running off what we know.
Right. So you started to talk about some lights.
Yeah. So like I told you I used to have nightmares about these lights coming in the room and searching for me. Well, give it some time. Life had, and I think this is the proper timeline, I believe. So I moved out for a while. Everything stopped for the most part. I don't remember anything weird happening to me when me and my wife were living on our own. However, we ran into hard times and had to move back in. So we moved back in. And I believe this is how it, that part of it. I remember the experience just like she does, but I'm trying to break down life in itself. We're both sleeping in bed. It's probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And she wakes me up saying there's somebody outside shining a light into the bedroom. And at first I'm groggy. I'm like, what in the fuck are you talking about? She's like, Kyle, there's somebody outside shining lights in the window. So, initially you think somebody's out in your backyard is not supposed to be there. So I get up, huffy puffy, open the window, and I'm looking into the yard, and I don't see anything at all. And I'm like, there's literally no one out there. And so she comes and stands next to me. And it's almost like we both saw at the same time. You look off in the distance, and there is an orange colored ball of light moving from south to north. And it's a pretty large ball of light. And we're both staring at it.
You say it's rather large. Can you give me like a large basketball or like large, like Volkswagen Beetle or
like what I can remember? It reminded me a lot of when you see the moon off in the distance.
No.
But it wasn't, it was 100% not the moon because we stood and watched it for probably 5 minutes and you could clearly see it moving across the skyline. Solid ball of light. No variances coming off of it. No like light flickers, nothing. It was just a reddish orange ball of light moving from south to north. And it even disappeared behind the tree wall. And my wife, she's like, what is that? And I had an inkling of what it was because I'd been into reading about UFOs and all that shit. But I came up with the most asinine thing in the world, and I said, it's probably, somebody probably has a giant bonfire over there and it's reflecting off a cloud. And she's like, excuse me? And I'm like, listen.
She calls bullshit.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I go, listen, we're not talking about this shit right now. We're going to fucking go to bed and we'll talk about it in the morning. Because I knew at the time had we started diving into that conversation and having it out right there, I would have never gone back to sleep. It would have scared the living shit out of me. Because growing up, that was the one thing that scared me more than anything was aliens. I was terrified of them, absolutely petrified of. But I was so drawn to the topic, ultra drawn to the topic. But I was so scared of them, and I was the same as you. During the daytime, hell yeah, let's go, baby.
Yeah.
But when nighttime hit, fuck that, I'm out. I'm not trying to do that stuff. But
I can remember being maybe 8 or 9, and my godfather, my dad's first cousin, for my birthday, bought me a hardcover book of Project Blue Book.
Oh, nice.
That book was so far above my reading level. But I held on to that thing, and I was just like, I got a piece of it right here.
There you go. That's awesome. That's awesome. But like I said, that was one of the instances where my wife was there to witness some of the oddities.
I got to ask you, you indicated that when you had your first experience when you were a young child, you pulled the covers up, you said, the Our Father.
Mm-hmm.
Did you continue that line of, trying to protect yourself, or was that something that you had gone back to each time with your experiences? Did you continue to pray?
I never thought about that, but no, I did not. Because as I think it's no fault. I'm not blaming anybody for this. I'm not at all. But when I was growing up, I had to go to I had regular school, and then I had what they called CCD classes every Wednesday night.
Yep.
And I think because I felt, I'm not even saying that this was the case, but I felt like it was all pushed onto me and I was force fed it. Of course, as you get into your teen years, what do? You start to rebel against the things that are forced at you. So I started to kind of abandon that way of thinking as I got older. And only until recently have I really started to kind of come full circle, where I have had cases where I can't explain what happened outside of divine intervention. I wouldn't say divine intervention. I would say divine acknowledgement. That's how I would phrase it. And I 100% believe that that's the case. But ironically enough, you do hear a lot of cases where people use the name of Jesus or prayer, and it somehow thwarts aliens to whatever degree. And I don't have an answer for that at all.
See, for the majority of my life, when I heard stuff like that, it was a big disconnect for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my life, those two things were not symbiotic. It didn't make sense to me. But in the last 5-6 years, like you were just saying, you hear multiple cases where people rebuke these things in the name of Jesus Christ, and it seems to have a positive effect on the situation.
Which means that whatever it is, and I just thought this, so I'm gonna try to iron this out here live on the show. But you stated it too. Like they weren't symbiotic. Alien and God has nothing to do with one another.
Right.
That's how our minds have always been trained. And then you have the other camp that are like, okay, well, that means that aliens aren't aliens. Aliens are demons, right? You'll hear that argument as well.
Right.
However, I just had this thought. Is it out of the realm of possibility? Because I don't think it is, now that I sit and kind of ponder on it for this short 30 seconds. So give me some room here. But if you're talking about, because we have to fathom that, and this is under obviously parameters, of course. If there is a race of whatever the fuck they are that it has the capability of traversing time and space and reaching us and fucking with us or studying us, whatever they're doing, that would, at least to me, suggest that these things are highly advanced. They're extremely intelligent. And we've always assumed that about aliens, that they are extremely intelligent, right? So who's to say that throughout their sciences, throughout their evolution, they didn't come up with a way to essentially prove the existence of a creator? And this is literally the first time I've ever thought about this statement, because I'm going through another topic where, and it's not the first time I've heard it. I've heard it about 2 or 3 times, where these ETs, who we perceive as ET, make contact with people here on Earth, and they reference, we are working with the creator. They don't say God.
Right.
They say creator.
Yeah.
And we always put a religious undertone to that, because that's just the way that we think.
Right.
But it is, I argue that it is also not illogical that they couldn't have somehow, through their advanced sciences, legitimately prove the existence of some ethereal force
that's responsible for everything.
Right. Because because we sit around and we talk about them being able to jump interdimensionally, go from universe to universe. I mean, think about that for a second. What that actually takes scientifically to be able to just manifest and then just demanifest, just disappear in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So who's to say that they haven't somehow came up with the backing of proving what we cannot prove? Because they're always, if you hear them teaching us, they're always talking about the evolution spiritually side of shit. You hear that all the freaking time. You know, going to the 4th density, the 5th density, and so on and so forth. Right. Well, that's far more than what my brain's capable of. I can tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely, mine too.
You know, but I feel like that has a little bit of weight to it, at least the possibility of it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. I don't know. Just it just came into my head there. I figured, why not just get it out?
Well, you know, I mean, I think those conversations, again, we go back to being able to have a conversation where somebody's not going to take a one-sided approach to listening to what you have to say. And, you know, no, you're full of shit. Kyle, right. You're wrong.
Right.
You're wrong. Because it clearly says in this big book that blah, 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 blah.
Right.
You know, so these conversations I think are helpful. One, for somebody who has experienced something and they're trying to rationalize it, trying to work it out. Now that they're not terrified of it, now that they've had some years away from it and have been able to step aside from the fear of having it happen to them to trying to figure out what it was that was going on or what was causing it. I mean, I think that's part of healing, part of coming to terms, coming to grips.
I agree. And the other thing, kind of circling back to what you were talking about in the beginning, and I've said this before on our show, that let's say for a split second here that you and me are having this conversation. We're just 2 dumbasses talking on the internet, right? But who's to say that somewhere out there listening, it doesn't spawn an idea in somebody's head where they're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then they have that mental capacity to start running down the math or the logistics behind all of it, just because of you and me throwing ideas into the ether.
Well, you guys might have astrophysicists listening to you, but I don't think
I wouldn't go that far.
Listening to me.
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm making light of it, but no, you make a great point.
I think that's another reason why the conversations are important, because whereas you and me may not always be nail on the head, I think that at the bare minimum, somebody else out there with the genius behind it
Yeah.
might just hear it and go, "Oh shit." And it just sparks that idea off in their brain, and they're like, "Well, we're running with this one, baby."
Yeah. Where are you at currently? I know for myself, for years, for the majority of my life, I was always under the impression that these would have to be coming from some other planet, some other galaxy, some other universe, traversing space and time to get to us. I'm now more in the camp of these things being here with us now, outside of our perception.
Okay. So they're
until they want to be, whether it's
almost like a Stranger Things ambiance to it there. Yeah. I honestly don't know where I'm at. I think all of the above is possible. Nostalgia part of me loves the idea that they come from other planets within the universe somewhere, whether it be Mars or BFE, beyond comprehension, right? But the older I get and the more we look into this stuff, the more utterly confused I am on stating my claim. Because at the beginning of the show, I would have said all day long, aliens come from another planet, wherever within the universe.
Yeah.
Now, I have so much more confusion on that subject than I ever have in my entire life, because I could easily see them being the way you're describing them, and I could also see them being here within the Earth. They talk the inner Earth theory. I mean, these things have been coming out of the ocean. A lot of those stories have been surfacing here lately.
Well, and you're talking about USOs, unidentified submerged objects, and yes, that has been kind of thrown back out into the mix here lately. But USOs have been a thing for a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah. It just a lot of the both of them, UFOs in general. I feel like they're putting it in a way that makes us perceive that they've been here the whole time. That's just kind of how I feel about it right now.
Yeah.
Everything, and for me, everything is subject to change. You might say something that rings true, or I'm like, oh shit. But I don't know. I think the grand scheme, I feel like all of it is probably the answer. If you think about it, you know what I mean? Because the way my brain works is, what are the odds that we're the only form of existence within the entire universe that we can't even fathom? We can't even comprehend how big it is.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit of braggadocious bullshit there, if you're going to make that claim.
Absolutely.
I definitely believe that there are parallel universes, dimensions, whole nine, densities, frequency, whatever terminology you want to use for it. And I would not doubt for a second that somebody out there has figured out a way to bridge them. I don't doubt that at all.
And the other problem for me with this is that, and I'm probably going to piss some people off, and I don't intend to, because I'm not saying this is necessarily my belief, but hypothetically, if God created everything, not only here on the earth, but everywhere, endless space, everything was created by this God, then these things would have been created by him too.
Mm-hmm.
But if God was more centralized to humanity in what we know of us being Homo sapiens sapien on planet Earth. I mean, that's still an amazing accomplishment, right?
Absolutely.
For a creator to have the ability to create us and everything that we have around us. And I don't say this to be heresy or blasphemous, but what if our God isn't the only God? What if there was another one that was responsible for a different universe that, I mean, if everything is made by the God that we know and understand or accept, then it makes sense that you found some comfort and got some level of release from your initial encounter when you said the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
And it makes sense that people who have reportedly rebuked them in the name of Jesus Christ would have some positive outcome from that. But if you didn't, I mean, I wonder if there's any people who have encountered these things, taken that route, and not had success with it.
That is a good question. I have not heard that yet in regards to what we perceive as extraterrestrial. I have heard that in regards to older forces.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Steve did one. I think it was the Hellfire Farm.
Yeah.
But whatever was residing there essentially laughed in the face of Jesus. It didn't give a fuck at all. And so there has to be at least some inkling to what you're saying, right? And I run into the guys of don't rule anything out at all, because I have also heard, and I know people are very opinionated about the Bible and its teachings, and that's fine. I'm not here to debate that, but I have also seen other people display teachings in the Bible as God wasn't alone in creating us. I wish I could remember the exact phrasing they used.
Yeah.
But because it's something about how we create you in our image, not my image. It's a wording there, right? And makes you wonder. I mean, that's obviously something that you and me aren't going to come anywhere close to proving until the day death comes knocking at our door.
I had done an episode with somebody who was, I mean, whether they were right or wrong, the only basis for what I'm saying is they spoke very intelligently, and it appeared that they had some level of education behind the statements that they were making, and that God wasn't alone, and that there were, I'm just pulling a number out of my ass, but it seemed like, there were 11, whether they were brothers and sisters or whether they were all brothers or whatever, but it seemed like, so I have heard that there were multiple.
Well, and then isn't it one of the, and I'm, beat me up if you must, but I'm not privy to a lot of religious lingo, but I know that there is it might be a 10th commandment where it's like, you shall not worship any God other than me, essentially. Maybe not the exact phrasing, but I think that's one of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which
not to call witness to false prophets.
Yeah.
No, there is something about other gods.
Which, I mean, that in itself right there would suggest that there is the existence of other gods.
Yeah.
Per verbiage, anyways.
Right.
Could that, I mean, you could sit and justify 1,000,001 ways, because I could stand here for Team Jesus right now and be like, well, that was written in a particular manner because at the time there were other religions on the planet, and this is the one true religion, so that's why we implemented that phrasing. You could explain it that way. Or
Yeah, absolutely.
there's legit existence of other gods, and that's where it holds true. I think it, for me, I believe that there's more than one celestial entity out there that has extreme reach.
I'll agree with that. I agree with that, but I'll also, with the caveat of that, I don't think that they are equal.
No, I don't either.
I don't think they're both doing the same thing.
No, I was actually going to be a little bit brazen and be like, I can also wrap my head around that there is a creator, and that's like the OG of the OGs.
Yeah.
But that people need to remember too, that if there is something that magnificent out there in the world, in the universe, cosmos, it's going to have a level of understanding that that level of understanding would break our brains to pieces. Because you could ask, why then would it allow for other gods to exist? I don't fucking know, but it does. There's a reason for it. I just don't know what it is.
Right.
Whether it's believing in its own teachings of, everything has free will, everything has a chance to exist. I mean, I don't know. And I'll probably never know the answer to that. I can live with that.
Man, you got me on a couple of holy shit moments.
Well, that's a good thing.
The bloody noses, and then
Bruce has reasonable data suggesting that his grandfather may have actually died from an alien implant.
Really?
Yeah. And I in no way, shape, or form can sit here and explain it to you, because Bruce is so smart and does what smart people do, which is really smart stuff. And he mathematically lays out the odds of all of it. And he has far greater odds of dying from an alien implant than what he actually died from. Like, of it just manifesting on its own. It has something to do with an infection from being punctured through because I guess they used to make entry into people's brains through that soft tissue up in the nose into the brain. And I don't know, it has to do with that and the likelihood of him developing this specific infection in that area. And even for Bruce himself, when he went and got his first surgery, I do not remember what it was. I think it had something to do, I don't remember what it was, to be honest with you now. But the doctor noticed, he asked his dad, had Bruce had any other prior surgeries? And his dad's like, no, not at all. Well, Bruce had a small hole at the top of his sinus cavity. And for the life of him, nobody could figure out how or why that had happened.
I'm curious, what about his death post-mortem would have triggered the autopsy to the medical examiner to look there?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just had to do with the type of infection that would have resulted up here. I can't even remember the name of an infection it was. It had something. It's very particular. It's very rare. And like I said, Bruce, like, he even writes out in the book the entire mathematical equation, all of it. It's all there for you to see and take in it. And I, of course, don't understand it, but I take his word for it. I'm just like, Jesus. The fact that he is, at least him as a scientist, is now convinced that it is likely that his grandfather died from the puncture this type of implant would have caused, is bananas to me.
And the doctor that wrote the book, he's still alive?
Yes, I'm gonna try to email him and see if I can't get him on the show. And talk to him about my experiences and see where they line up exactly, what he thinks lines up with his. That would be the game plan, anyways.
That's
Assuming
interesting.
I can get a hold of him.
You know, that throws me into a whole new. I guarantee you my listeners are tired of hearing me saying, well, when I was 5, I was already obsessed with UFOs, because I have said it a shit ton.
Yeah.
And always having a fear of what was outside my bedroom window every time I went to sleep.
It's weird. When you said that, I was kind of like, that's strange. Because, I mean, that's essentially like what happened with my first experience. Something outside the window caught my attention and woke me up. You know, and Bruce reports the glowing reddish orange ball in some of his encounters. And he's not the only one. The Bledsoe case, same thing.
Yeah.
Bruce has missing time. I don't recall any missing time for myself. Just so much. He had nightmares. He had a lot of waking, like where he would just wake up and not know where the fuck he was. Had no idea where he was or what he was doing. It's super, like I said, super interesting. It's crazy that even what I had happen to me even remotely matched with what he happened. Of course, he had far more counts that he was able to remember. And like I said, I don't remember if he himself had regression or if it just kind of naturally came back to him. But it's definitely strange that I even stumbled onto the book at all.
Yeah.
I just randomly picked it one day on Amazon and started going through it.
It's interesting that you bring up missing time, because I never was privy to or aware of ever having any missing time, other than a couple of years ago when I went down from here down to Tennessee to Tony's.
I remember you telling me about that.
Tony's studio.
And you also saw an object in the sky too, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Bruce's first initial encounter, he, well, the one he starts the book with, I should say, he recalls a series of events, right? And then as he's talking to other people later on, they recall a much longer series of events than he does.
Oh, really?
He's like, I only saw this. And everybody else is like, no. It was this, this, and this. And he's like, I do not remember the this, and this. I just remember seeing it as this. And then a girl even comes out later on and was like, where'd you go? Like, where'd you go for that little bit? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was standing in the backyard the whole time. No, you weren't. So, I mean, it's, as he looks back on it in life, like, he's like, holy shit, like, was I taken in that moment? Which implicates so much. The fact that these, whatever they are, have the ability to shut everybody off. Wipe everybody's memory.
Now it's got me going back to, so I had missing time. I did see something in the sky.
Right.
And but with what transpired throughout the rest of that weekend, that was much more decidedly spiritual in nature than extraterrestrial.
Right.
So it goes back to what we were talking about before, is
there's a lot of gray area in that, because we've read a lot of stories where these alien encounters, abductions, they start out paranormal. They start out with things going missing around the house, strange voices, shadow figures.
Yeah.
And then they full blow into these alien situations.
And I had a shadow figure.
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
When I was a kid. Only one time. And when I saw it, it was, like I said, I'm an only child, and it was just me, my mom, and my dad that lived in the house. And when I saw it, it was standing at my bedroom door. And it was a tall, thin, wavy-haired, masculine silhouette. You could tell it was male, but it was not. When I say masculine, I mean that in just the general sense that it looked like a man.
Yeah.
My mom had curly hair and was short and kind of robust. And my dad was short and had a pot belly and had a very distinctive flat top haircut. So I
Definitely
knew
wasn't him.
I knew what those silhouettes were.
Right.
And this was much taller than my mom and dad. And when I say much taller, I don't mean like extraordinarily tall or gangly or unnaturally tall. That's not what I'm saying. But, I think my dad was 5'8". So this was, 6'1", 6'2", somewhere, I don't know for sure because I was young and I didn't really ever try to measure it out, but it was significantly taller than what either one of my mom or dad would have been. And it was terrifying. It scared the hell out of me. And I did just like you did. I pulled the sheets up over me, and I don't know that I ever pulled them down as much as I kind of peeked out and it was gone. But I'm pretty sure I just left the blankets over my head and eventually fell asleep.
Yeah. Which a lot of us do in these these accounts. And it's bizarre that even Bruce talks about it, the amount of people that just go back to sleep.
Yeah.
When these things happen, and he questions if it's not done on purpose. He thinks there's a level of mind control that happens with these entities that are able to essentially just, give us the anesthesia again.
Sure.
Which makes sense, because logically you wouldn't think that you would go back to sleep, but time and time again, we've all done it. So it is interesting to consider. And your shadow, I've never heard shadow person described that way. I do find it interesting though that the person that gave you the reading was conflicted on where it came from.
Yeah. That was unsettling.
Yeah. Well, it's new. Because I don't feel like that should happen very often. I feel like it's a rarity. On one hand, it's cool. On the other hand, like you said, it's kind of scary because there's no answer, and you don't quite know.
She said, like her assessment of it was very ambiguous. It wasn't. She didn't feel that it was had negative energy. Didn't feel that it had positive energy. It just was what it was, and she didn't know what it was.
That's interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Like I said, I've never heard of anything like that yet in my studies. So it's interesting. I'll have to keep that in mind as I traverse through all this information out there. See if I can ever find one that links to it.
And when you start talking about this stuff and you start digging in a little bit and you kind of, I'm trying to put myself in your head because of your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I start thinking back about things, and it's like my son was, I don't know, maybe 3, maybe 4 at most. Back in the backyard at our house that we had built, and had a really nice swing set for the kids. And I don't know where Rachel was at the time. I think she was still in diapers. I was out there and I was swinging him. He had been playing in his sandbox, and then he wanted me to push him on his swing. We were facing the back of the house. And of course, like all kids do, I want to go a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. And, for 3 or 4, whatever he was as high as I was comfortable pushing him.
Yeah.
He was up there pretty good, but not all the way. And I can remember having just this weird conversation with him. And it started by him saying, "It took me a long time to get here, And I said,
Okay.
what do you mean? And he goes, I came from a long ways away. And I was pushing him, and he kept looking up to the sky as I'm pushing him, you know? And that conversation's always stuck with me. That one, when my son started talking, he never went through the baby talk. When he started talking, it was like, it was good speech.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing.
It was very articulate. Obviously, he didn't have command of a lot of words, but what he did say came out very, very clear and not. I never struggled like I did with my daughter, you know, with like, what are you saying? I have no idea what that means. That was just,
and that's why, Eric, that's why I tell everybody, when you tell us your story, try to include as much detail as you possibly can, because what you think is insignificant might be the missing piece to the entire story.
Yeah.
Because people like us exist out there who have heard this before, they've experienced something similar, and for them that puzzle piece fits in. They're like, oh shit, I gotta get a hold of this guy because I know what the hell's going on, or I think I know what's going on.
And if there's any truth to there being a lineage to this.
Yeah.
And if my dad, whatever that was that he got out of him, you know, maybe it was some kind of a piece of calcium or something that, you know, had been in there since he was born, and it just shot out like a fucking BB gun and broke the mirror, you know. Then my obsession with UFOs. And
yeah, I mean, maybe it is all coincidence, but more times than not, it's coincidence isn't exactly coincidence.
Yeah, I don't believe it is.
And so it does make you wonder, makes you ponder on things. Makes, like in your case, you're looking backwards in time now, looking for puzzle pieces, seeing if there's any more that fits. And that's kind of why I also want to talk to Bruce to see if he can't spark any more memories for me.
Yeah.
And making puzzle pieces fit together.
Well, I tell you what, if you ever decide to do the hypnosis, I would do it with you.
Okay. I go back and forth. I contemplate it quite often, especially when these conversations come up, because
but I do agree with you that there is the potential to break your fucking brain.
Yeah, it's scary.
Are there people that remember these experiences on their own because they're stronger?
Maybe.
Are there people that replace these memories with screened images, or are they replacing your memories with screened images because you can't handle it?
I think there's definitely something to it, for sure. But I don't know if people. I think some people. I don't think that some people break through because they're necessarily stronger than you and me. I think that either whatever they did, whatever wall they put up, somehow the person dismantles the wall. Or is it possible that throughout time, as we become wiser, maybe our level of acceptance expands, our consciousness, our spirituality expands to a degree, which then would allow us to access that information, like almost kind of like what you're saying, but because we are evolving spiritually, consciously, it's now there's something that unlocks, and it's like, okay, well, you might be ready,
to
start digging into this recess of your mind. So should you choose? I think some people don't choose it. I think some people just shut that fucking door, shut the light off in the room, and they forget that exists. I think they just go, goodbye. I don't want any, and for a long time, that's how I was. Absolutely not. No way. Not looking into it. But the more I dig through this stuff, the more I'm kind of like, maybe I should.
Well, I think you're 100% right. There are definitely those people, because there are people who just will not contemplate or accept any kind of paranormal as being real. You know, they assess a weird thing that happens and they find comfort in covering it with, well, it was the wind blew and that's why the door shut, or
Exactly.
you know, something like that. Or it was just a weird noise. The house was settling, you know. And I don't know if they're right or if we're right, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely agree. And like I said, I mean, for some people that would fucking destroy their brains to think, oh shit, I have a ghost in my house. This is great. This is awesome. I think some people are just such worst case scenario people that their brain dismantles itself considering the option. And we've learned through our experiences that not every single, 'cause let's face it, when people think of ghosts or aliens or Bigfoot or dogmen, it's negative connotation, negative connotation, negative connotation, right? We don't generally focus on the extraterrestrial race that is channeling through people that is like, hey, we're here to assist you. We want to evolve you consciously and spiritually to allow you guys to go to the fourth density. We don't talk about the guardian angel situations that people have. You know what I mean? We always focus so much on the negative side of everything, not to mention horror movies. I mean, horror movies are a great scare factor in all of this as well.
Absolutely. I'm curious if you've ever, I can only think of the entity's name that this guy channels. I can't think of his real name, but the entity that he channels is named Bashar.
Bashar. Why do I feel like I've heard that somewhere?
This guy is he's a bald-headed gentleman, and he does conferences where he'll sit in front of a room full of people, and people, he's channeling an extraterrestrial entity that is just like what you were saying, supposedly here to tell us all the good things, and that they're not here to do anything wrong. They're just here to try to help us ascend to, you know, the best things that we can be. And, you know, I mean, initially I want to just call bullshit from the top of my lungs. Cause here we go. We got another guy who figured out how to make some money, and he's channeling some extraterrestrial, and, you know, you got a room full of people who are paying to hear it. But his message in itself, if you can strip away all the other stuff, if you can strip away, he's a normal guy that supposedly gets possessed by an extraterrestrial that's talking through him and all that. If you can strip all of that,
for you and me sounds crazy. Even for you and me.
If you can strip that away, the message that this guy talks about, it's a phenomenal message. It really is. It is what we should all be doing with our interactions with others, and how we look at life, and how we look at, you know, what it's going to be like when we leave this vessel that we're in, when our energy, our soul, our spark, whatever you want to call it, leaves that. I want to talk to the guy. I want to talk to him.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying I'm buying the entity talking through him, but his message, if you could take that message and put it in a bottle, and, you know, have somebody find that and read it, not knowing anything about where it came from, I think a lot of people would be like, holy shit, this is exactly how we should be behaving. This is how we should be living our lives.
It sounds exactly like what I'm looking into right now. I'm looking into the
fantastic
law
message.
of one.
Say that again.
I said I'm looking into the law of one right now. Is what I've been writing episodes on. It sounds extremely similar, except for the entity that I recall so far is Hatan and Ra. But the message is, I mean, I feel, because when we talked about, I've talked about other cases where the wording, the verbiage is very suspect. But I'm reading through these transcripts of this same thing, channeling a far off being, and same thing where you're kind of like, shit. I mean, this sounds nice.
Yeah.
Good. Maybe there is good out there. Maybe there is somebody trying to help us, you know?
The guy's human, the human's name, I guess if we're going to put it that way, is Daryl Anka, Anka.
Okay. Is he with any particular group by
Nope.
chance? You know?
He, as far as I can tell, he is himself, and you can go to Bashar Channeling, at Bashar Channeling on Instagram. Looks like he's got a website where he puts out where he's going to be in person, doing his money gig. And I mean, whenever you're putting out a message and you're charging people to come in and hear it, I get it. I get it.
That does kind of take away from the message a little bit.
It does. 100% it does.
But we're also living in a very monetarily based world right now as well. Right. But I do 100% see where you're coming from. When you're like, hey, I can give you the keys of the world, but you got to pay me $39.99.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So anybody that's listening to this, don't take me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm buying into this guy or anything. What I'm saying is what he's preaching, what he's putting out there is a very good message. And I think it's worth listening to.
That's awesome.
Because it can give you a perspective on really just how important are you to the big picture.
Dude, sometimes it ain't about the messenger. I think a lot of times in today's world, we get a little bit carried away with who's saying it and not what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Be like if, I don't know, just pick a publicly hated figure and they came out and they said everything that you wanted to hear, but you're like, nope, don't like that guy.
Yeah.
He's dumb. So I'm not going to listen to anything he has to say, even if he is right. Fuck him.
Apparently he's been doing it for 35 years.
Oh, wow. That's dedication there.
You know, so
that's dedication.
I mean, he's either got himself one hell of a gig, but again, in small parts, in Instagram reels or in small YouTube shorts that I've watched, the message that he's saying, it's got a good tone to it.
Yeah. You wouldn't think he would make that great of a living doing it, but I could be wrong. He might be a hell of a lot more known than we give him credit for. Because he either makes a lot of money doing it or he is 100% dedicated to the message.
Yeah. I don't know. I would really like to talk to him.
I'll try to reach out to him. You can get him on. I bet it's not out of the world of possibilities. Especially if you believe in that message enough. I mean, it's worth getting out there, getting people aware of it, and hopefully change the way people think a little bit.
I mean, ultimately, I think what would be best, and I'm sure he would have no favor in this, is that I would just like to get him to come on and talk about the message and not tell anybody who he is.
Yeah. Might. You never know.
Because if you take that out of it, if you take away that immediate bias that, yeah, I'm Daryl Anka, and I'm going to close my eyes here for a second, and I'm going to channel this light being from wherever the fuck he's at to come talk to you guys about how you're living. That immediately takes a lot away from it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And again, I have to be completely transparent. I have never listened to like him speak for an hour.
Right.
So I don't know if there's any inconsistencies or any things that he's like, you know, deviating and wandering wildly from. But the things I have seen, I'm like, man, you know, if a pastor in your church was standing up and saying these kind of things rather than some of the things that they do talk about, I would pay more attention.
Right.
But maybe I'm just a fucking idiot.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think you're just more open-minded than a lot of people. Not so quick to judge. And it's weird. It's weird dealing with that thought process, because there's a part of me that would be like, if he truly believes his message, he would have no problem taking a back seat to the glory of it. I'm just not acknowledging who he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like a being of light and love would be okay. Yeah, absolutely. As long as you hear my message, that's all I care about. I don't care about the fame behind it.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the coin, you're kind of like, well, there also needs to be a level of acceptance on everybody's part. You know, you need to understand where it's coming from, because we wouldn't. I don't think we would. Most people wouldn't question it as much if his story was, I am being contacted by a guardian angel, by an angel. I think
Right.
that just that phrasing alone, more people would accept it.
Yep.
And I get it. I get it. I do. I definitely understand. You know that. And then there's still some people out there that would hear angel or fucking alien or Bashar or whoever and go, "You're fucking nuts. You're crazy."
It would, absolutely.
Oh yeah, you know that would happen. So it's just, I don't know. I do feel like, though, if he is sold on his message, he probably would just be like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to get I just want people to understand my message. That's where my gut says.
I think I need to reach out to him.
Yeah, I think you should too.
My friend, we are at 2 hours and 10 minutes, 11 minutes.
Been a long combo.
It has. And we, I think we preempted that with about a half hour before we even started recording. So, I'm going to let you get back to your family and enjoy some of those times, because you'll never get this 2 hours back.
It was an enjoyable 2 hours. Not to mention they were shopping anyway. So
were they?
Yeah.
But I'm very happy to have got a chance to talk to you again. It's been quite a while since we've seen each other, and
It has.
it's been an absolute pleasure as always. You and Steve are stand-up guys, and like I said, you always have a home here at Uncomfortable, and
Likewise, my friend.
been a great conversation.
It has.
Before
It's
we
good
get
to-
out of
good to
here,
get them out.
what's that?
I said it's good to get some of them conversations out there sometimes.
They are. What do you see now? Where are you at after having the conversation, after coming out and saying the things that you said? Are you feeling one way or another about any of it? Are you like feeling a need to dig more?
Not in particular. I think I'm pretty satisfied with a lot of it, but curiosity does come scratching once in a while, I think the way my mind is handling it before full on regression, I think there is a part of me that wants to talk to Bruce and see where that conversation goes. See if he doesn't unlock a couple more doors along the way. And I think if that was the case, if he showed me more information than what I currently have, I would probably highly consider regression at that point.
Yeah.
Because it would kind of prove to me that there is still more to uncover and unlock. And maybe by then I would be more, because there is a part of me that is still afraid of those answers. I think that's fair, because it's a weird one to consider that you've been part of an alien abduction. That's bizarre.
Yeah. Altering.
Yeah. Yeah.
On a lot of different aspects.
Yeah. It's hard to explain.
But I'm serious. If you decided to do that, if you wanted a hypnosis amigo, I would do that with you.
Well, I appreciate that.
It needs to be almost a blind study, though. I agree. No previous information to this guy. Point him to specific times, but not give him not an ounce of anything to use on you.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have somebody there to watch dude, but B, like say at the end of it was a massive waste of time. I just rambled on about cookies and crazy shit. It would be nice to just have somebody be like, dude, there's nothing there, man.
Right.
Like you're good. And it'd also be like, Kyle, but say there was nothing there in regards to the alien abduction. Maybe I uncovered some deep meaning shit for my own life. It'd still be nice to be like, Kyle, there's nothing alien wise going on, but you should definitely go back and give that shit a listen, because it's deep and there's some stuff going on there that you might want to pay attention to.
I'd do it.
I appreciate that.
So
I believe you too. Never pull the trigger.
You let me know.
I will.
Brother, it's been fantastic talking to you again.
Likewise.
Can't wait till we're in the same room again at some point.
It'll happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, one half of the dynamic duo of Holosky podcast. You've been listening to Kyle Brady tonight. Kyle, thanks so much. I appreciate the time, and thanks for sharing your stories with us.
No, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
You got me thinking about nosebleeds again. It's been a long time, but they were a very, very popular part of my life for a good while.
I know your pain.
Kyle, good night.
You too, buddy.